Welcome to the GCI Conference Center. Please enter. Thank you. Please stand by. You will now be placed into conference. There are 12 participants in the conference.
Good morning, Lauren. Yes, I am.
Okay. Is Mr. Klinkart there yet?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just logged in.
Oh. Okay. Mr. Miller, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Good morning, Nick. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good.
Rainy day, as you know.
Actually, a sunny day, and I'm going to be cooped up inside. We've been pouring down rain for weeks. Mr. Jaime, are you online?
Yes, sir.
Morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Thanks for asking.
Good. Mr. Schulte, are you online?
I am. Good morning.
Morning, Bruce. How are you?
Great.
Mr. DeShock, are you online? Mr. DeShock, are you online? Ms. Wilson, are you online?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Klinkart, have you heard anything from Mr. DeShock? Has he done fishing?
I'm here.
Oh, wow.
Hi, Casey.
I am. Yeah, I just came on. We're done for the year, and so I should be back onto a regular schedule.
Oh, good. Great. Good to hear you. Hopefully your fishing was well.
Yeah, they never pay enough, but it wouldn't matter what they pay. It's never enough.
Well, I know there's a big difference between what I buy in the retail store and what fishermen get paid, that's for sure.
Yeah, 70 cents was the Bristol Bay price this year.
Wow. Not good. Okay, so like we have every board members online. We have staff and the attorney online. I show it is now 9 o'clock. We have my iPad, so I will call the Marijuana Control Board meeting of August 19th and 20th, 2020 to order. And this meeting was to have been in Nome. We are on teleconference. The governor has signed the order that exempts us and the Alcohol Beverage Control Board from having to meet in each judicial district in this next year. So we are okay to meet telephonically. We will meet this way for the next 2 days. Hopefully maybe a day and a half. So with that, I will call us to order. And I would just ask Ms. Craig to note the roll that all the board members are here, as well as Mr. Klinkart, Ms. Wilson, and yourself.
Notated. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there an approval of the agenda? Does anybody have any changes they want to make? Okay, hearing none, I would ask the board to weigh in on tabs 45 and tab 46. Tab 45 is a delegated for a year or more, and the 46 is pending inspection for 6 months or more. We have postponed any discussion or hearing from those businesses in the last 2 meetings. It is on the agenda for this meeting. They have been informed that we are going to go over that. So I thought I would offer to the board, do we want to do that for tabs 45 and 46, or do we want to simply wait for the next meeting and we can pass the word to those persons that they do not need to be online? What is the wishes of the board?
Mr. Chairman, Bruce Schulte.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, we've had this with a number of other licensees, and
and some of them I know are really struggling, for one reason or another to get up and running. I'm inclined to give them latitude. I mean, there's no public safety issue. I mean, they're not actually selling products yet. So I'm inclined to kind of let them coast until they say, hey, we've decided we're not doing this, or until, their license is up for renewal.
Okay. Mr. Miller or Mr. Jaime or Mr. Deshock?
And this is Jaime. I have no concerns pushing it.
Okay. All right. So at least two. So we'll just pass the word that we're going to move this to October meeting. I would simply ask for the October meeting, when the staff put down which business licenses are in delegated status or pending, if they would put the dates in there, like the date they filed the application, the date that the delegation was given by the board, or the date that pending inspection, put in those dates so we can see if there's ones that are 2.5 years old, maybe we want to do something. If they're, 5 months away, then maybe we don't. But if you could just sort of give us some idea of how long they've been in that status, I would appreciate that. But so you can pass the word that tabs 45 and 46 will not be subject to meeting today or tomorrow. Okay, with that change, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Schulte.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. Any objection? Okay, hearing none, that's passed. Ms. Wilson, I have a question before we get started.
Yes, sir.
Given that we're on the phone with the time lapse, can we assume that every motion is automatically seconded, or do we have to have a formal second? I know on our assembly, our rules state that when a motion is made, it is accepted. I realize we need to take roll call votes, but I was curious of whether we needed to have a formal second.
Well, I have never had that question asked because all of them have had in most of my past meetings, there's always been a formal second. Are we concerned that we can't get a formal second, or? No, I was just, it's another 20 seconds of time to get business done. And there's only 5 of us and we're on the phone. So if somebody's on mute and forgets, then, so it was just a question. We'll go ahead with formal seconds and let you try to answer that later. I was just thinking maybe on I'd be happy to.
Okay.
It's just one of the new coronavirus questions. So
well, I know under Robert's Rules of Orders.
Too.
Yeah, I know under Robert's Rules of Orders, some of us have been able to do that. Our assembly assumes, and so most of our motions are, I move to approve such and such ordinance and ask for unanimous consent. And if there's no objection, then we don't even formally do a roll call vote. But I know we don't want to do that here, but if we could just avoid a second. But
I can tell you at yesterday's meeting,
of lack of a second.
Right, and that happened at yesterday's alcohol meeting as well. There was a lack of a second. So I think it, serves a valid purpose. That said, it could also just be a defeated vote if you assume a second. But if you don't mind taking the extra 20 seconds, I prefer it until I can get you an answer.
Sure, that'd be good.
We can just resolve to be Johnny on the spot with our seconds.
Very good. And I know Mr. Klinkert will probably tell you, but with the working group, we worked on, some expanded Zoom sessions. So perhaps in the future, it'll just be a raised hand that people can see through video.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know he's been working on that, and when we get to tomorrow to talk about October, we will probably talk about a Zoom since I know Alaska Municipal League, their annual meeting in November is going to be distance. I know AAFN in October is distance. So I'm assuming that our October meeting will be hopefully Zoom, so at least we can see shiny faces. I may have to get out of my pajamas on October, but anyway. Okay, so with that, we are on to approval of the minutes of the April 2 and 3, 2020 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve. Schulte?
Motion. Second? There is a second. Is there any objection or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, then those are approved. Okay, we are now at board governance. This is the time for us to state whether there's any change in our status related to any business that may come before the board and our duties as board members. So I will just call the roll, and if there's any differences or changes or anything that needs to be declared, you can do so at that time. So, Mr. Miller.
No changes.
Mr. Jaime.
No changes.
Mr. Schulte.
No changes.
Mr. DeShock.
No change.
Okay, and I am no change. So, guess we're just a bunch of stick in the muds here. Okay, so we are on at 10 minutes early to public testimony. I know that we have set this for 9:20, so if there's not much testimony, then we will hang on there for a while so that those who may be coming in at 9:20 or 9:30 to testify can still get online. So with that, with public testimony, we are on the phone and been very happy the last couple of meetings where we have not had a lot of talking across and people have had their phones muted, which is appropriate, and hopefully people will continue to do so that the board can do our business in an orderly fashion. But it is hard to tell who would like to testify. So this is public testimony, and whoever would like to testify needs to get my attention. I will try to recognize you, state your name, spell your last name for the minutes, and then proceed with your testimony. We'll try to limit it to 2 minutes. I won't be stricter on the time because I don't know how many people will testify, but try to hold it to a couple of minutes. So who would like to go first on public testimony? And this is on testimony, not on issues before the board. These are on issues that are not before the board at this time. So who would like to testify?
Good morning, this is Trevor Haynes.
Trevor, you're on, spell your last name.
Last name is spelled Haynes.
Okay.
And I'm speaking today, thank you. I'm speaking today in my capacity as Vice President for the Alaska Marijuana Industry Association, AMIA. On behalf of AMIA, I would like to thank the Marijuana Control Board, Director Klinkhart, and the AMCO staff for their efforts to initiate working groups, including the formation of a transportation working group. This initial progress shows commitment by the board and by AMCO to tackle the important and fundamental problems in the industry. These are problems not just for licensees, but for the cannabis industry as a whole. We see working groups as having great potential as a means for dealing with the most difficult of these industry problems. Our hope is that the Transportation Working Group is just the beginning. We appreciate your efforts thus far and encourage you to continue to create and facilitate working groups as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Is there any question of Mr. Haynes? Okay, hearing none. Who is next on public testimony on non-agenda items?
I would like to comment.
Sure, and your name, please.
Tina Smith,
Tina Smith.
spelling S-M-I-T-H.
Okay? Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. When creating Alaska marijuana regulations, the intent was to keep Alaska cannabis businesses owned and operated by Alaskans. However, there's a very large hole with zero protection against outside involvement, and that would be the education courses. There are 12 education courses listed on the UNCA website, and currently I own the only one listed as an in-person. But I'm unable to do that now because of the whole COVID situation. So that means as of the end of July, there were only 4 active links on the links to entirely Alaskan-run companies teaching the handlers course. I'll repeat that for those in the back. There are only 4 active Alaskan-run courses on your website. Between broken links and corporate members that are located in Washington and Colorado, we have more outside companies teaching the handlers courses than those here in Alaska. I see that as a huge problem. The first course listed on the UNCA website was an unsafe link, eventually taking me to Medical Marijuana 411 website based out of Redmond, Washington. The second is the CannabisHandler.com that claims to be the lowest price course at $39.99 with a 100% pass guarantee. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the impression that these handlers permits were to assure the industry that the holder of the permit was well versed in the regulations and the parameters in which they must operate within. The third takes place with the R Serving website. It's based out of South Dakota. The fourth is Green Culture out of Denver. Fifth is 360 Training out of Texas. And finally, the sixth is Alaska Green Sources that's out of Kenai. The seventh is the Marijuana Handlers that's owned by Coleman, Inc. The director appears to be an Alaskan, but the vice president and listed management appear to be in Washington and Colorado. The eighth is Alaska Marijuana Institute, and that's in Alaska. The ninth is Sirius Circus, which is a broken link. The 10th and 11th are Alaskan, and the 12th is mine. I see so many issues with this as it stands. Not only are they outside companies, but they're all listed before Alaskan companies. Most of these companies also appear to be the Walmart of handler permits, with their extremely low prices and lack of actual in-depth instructions that go hand in hand with those creating courses here in the States. We know the importance of the regulations and how it reflects on the owners and their very licenses, as we've been here helping create them. With the availability of these discount courses, it makes it clearly impossible for the Alaskan companies to compete, especially when they're found at the very bottom of the list of approved courses. What's the incentive for us to put together comprehensive, in-depth courses for students, pay the fees, go through licensing just to be outdone by outside discount courses? I'm questioning if it's even worth the effort and cost. And I can tell you that with the current setup, I can't afford to continue. When I will be forced to transfer my courses to an online platform. Currently, that scenario is not cost-effective at all. Before long, you'll have nothing but discount courses teaching our permit holders the regulations. And then you will be wondering why the crazy amount of NOVs keep being brought to your attention. We are the smallest demographic in this industry. And contrary to what some believe, we are absolutely part of the industry. Need I remind you that without us, there would be no licensees, no employees, and no establishments at all. In closing, I propose a change in regulations to reflect the common wish that Alaskans alone are involved in benefit from the Alaskan cannabis industry. This can be accomplished simply by taking the word establishment out of 3AA 30615 to reflect that all cannabis license types, including education, be owned and operated by and for Alaskans. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Is there any questions of Ms. Smith?
Yeah, this is Casey DeShock.
Mr. DeShock.
Yeah, just in your experience, what would be the difference in prices between what you're offering generally compared to a discount provider from outside?
About $30.
And does your, as far as a time commitment, is there a variable in the time commitment between a discount course and the course that you offer?
Absolutely. The discount courses claim that they can do it, or that you can go through the course and pass the test within 2 hours. My in-person course is at least 6 hours.
Okay, and your in-person course is offered in roving locations, or always the same location for somebody to find?
It depends on where classes meet. I am able to roam.
Thank you very much. I was just wanting to get a picture of where you see the the difference between the discount courses and yours and what they offer, price and time commitment and convenience?
Massive time commitment and even just your testing.
Okay. Any other questions of Ms. Smith from the board? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Smith. Who else would like to testify on public testimony on non-agenda items?
Through the chair, this is Jana Weltine.
Ms. Weltine.
Thank you. My last name, Weltzin. As initial comment, I just kind of want to back up Tina on what she just said, mainly because I've gone through some of those online courses and my paralegals have just picked out so many inaccurate statements that aren't applicable to our industry or our regulations. So I do, and actually I've gone through Tina's, and Tina's is pretty, on point. So I do think she has a good point here about these discount bargain classes. Might be something to look into. But that's just an aside note. I wanted to also take the time to thank the staff and the directors. We have continually seen an increase in efficiency and consistency from the AMCO staff. The whole licensing team has been just amazing, and they've really, really worked so hard. And I wanted to remind licensees that no matter what you're dealing with, when you're dealing with Jason, Carrie, Jane, Jack, Olivia, TJ, Randy, or Jennifer, these guys have been working so hard and putting so many hours in, and they're reviewing hundreds of renewals. So please be respectful, and please make sure that you understand that they are the backbone of our industry. They're moving us forward, and they're going above and beyond to make sure that this industry keeps moving forward and getting better. So I really want to thank them so much for their time. I also want to talk about caps on licensing. And I know this is kind of a controversial thing, but as the federal legalization looms closer, big companies, once federal legalization happens, are going to want to move into Alaska. Now, we've created a system that is Alaskan-owned, and so many Alaskan families and business owners have invested their hard-earned money, cashed out their retirement accounts to create these businesses. If you don't set a cap on licensing before federal legalization, then we're going to have an issue because these businesses, these Alaskan-owned businesses, won't be able to it's going to be difficult for them to compete with the big companies. If you cap the licenses now, the big companies are going to have to negotiate and have to deal with Alaskan-owned businesses. And that means, in large part, that these Alaskan-owned businesses will get bought out, they'll recoup their investment, and they'll make money off of pioneering in this industry. And I think that's so important. So I really hope we can open a conversation on caps on licensing soon. I do hear somebody just click-clacking away, so I don't know if anybody wants to put their phones on mute when they type. Might be annoying after I get done for some other people. And then I also wanted to discuss the hemp licensing that has been moving forward in Alaska. And, Alaskan marijuana companies
Ms. Weltine, that's on our agenda.
Yes, it is, but this isn't, well, I can hold my comments on hemp if you would like. It's not exactly on point of what you're going to be talking about.
Okay, go ahead, and just remember it is on our agenda. We are going to have a discussion.
Okay, well, I can just actually hold my comments on that then. I don't want to cross over.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of Ms. Weltine? Okay, hearing none. Who's next on public testimony on non-agenda items?
I would like to give a public comment. My name is Lisa Coates with Urban Extract.
Spell your last name, please.
Coates, C-O-A-T-E-S.
Okay, thank you. Go right ahead.
My comment thank you for taking the time. My comment will be pretty short. I was just looking over the MCB regulation project, and I don't see anything on there for looking into changing the edible limits from 5 milligrams per serving to something higher. I think we've been in this industry operating for a couple of years now, and I think it's time to visit that. It's extremely, we still are competing with the black market, and all the testing requirements for something that's edible, and it becomes very cost prohibitive. And I think it's just worthy of looking into. And I also would like to reiterate things that I fully support the capping of licenses. Because one of the concerns I have too is what happens when it does become federally legal and having a residency requirement. Could that be unconstitutional? I don't know. I don't ever hear that this type of conversation from the board in the board meeting. So these are just concerns as a business owner that we have to think about. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, are there any questions of Ms. Coates? Okay, hearing none, is there anybody else to testify on non-agenda items during public testimony? Okay, hearing none, and I show it as 9:25. We will go and do the director's report, and after that, we will come back to public testimony just to double check. With that, we will suspend public testimony at this time, and we will move to the director's report, which I guess is tab 2. Mr. Klinkhardt.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'm not going to read my 2-page document, but I'm just for the sake of keeping everybody's time and keep things moving, but I want to just hit on a couple of things. As was mentioned by, I believe it was Mr. Haynes, we did begin our project to test a working group in the process, and I want to say thanks to Nick Miller for helping me put that together. It was definitely the first test, and we did kind of pick something we thought that we could accomplish, which had to do with transportation, more specifically the hubbing. It gave us not only a chance to test the process and get everybody together in a Zoom room, if you will, but to test our software, our hardware, and we're actually working on a process which we think will be a stepping stone to be able to do this at the next meeting. So that was very helpful. But specifically for this, we were able to come up with a couple of different ideas having to do with how we could potentially fix this problem that the industry clearly communicated that it is an issue. We had our enforcement guys there who saw things from their perspective, which was good, and led credence to whether or not a solution would work. We are currently moving forward with working with Metric to actually test one of their hubbing processes, and we're hoping we've got volunteers from the industry to help. And I just, there was just a lot of good from it. There was a lot of work that had to be done to put into it, but I'm really happy that we've gone this far, and we're hopefully going to have some answers probably, or maybe even have this thing tested and ready to implement if it indeed is going to work, and we'll keep you up to date on that. So I want to thank everybody who assisted. Also, something that was brought up by Mr. Miller, he's keeping me honest and busy. I was telling him that. Had to do with licensed premises and infant breastfeeding. We've been working with DHSS on some things, and we came together and worked on a couple of different ideas. I ran it by some more subject matter experts we put together, and we'll be talking about it today more in depth as to processes that essentially we were in direct conflict of federal labor laws, but only in a very short and tiny area. So we're going to bring forth what we think is a proposed solution, which I think will allow businesses within the industry to help their staff be able to have their employees be able to breastfeed, be able to provide that service for their child, and do it in a way that doesn't affect the law. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. And finally, I just want to touch on something that I spoke quite a bit about yesterday at the ABC board as well, and that is enforcement, coming back to having a discussion, not only kind of as helping the board and myself and enforcement and licensees understand processes of enforcement, but to be able to, for you, the board members, to be able to tell us, to tell enforcement and have a conversation as to what are the priorities going to be when it comes to enforcement. And the ABC board is very excited about doing that. They've actually asked us to set up a Zoom meeting to be able to present things and have this discussion. And so I want to offer that to this board as well, that sometimes the enforcement, I think, as they've communicated that they have felt like they're just kind of winging it, and that's not really a good way long-term to be doing things. I know that people have said they want to be compliant and they want to be held accountable, but it's frustrating when they see other people who aren't. And so I think that this is really a conversation that is a mile wide and a mile deep, and we just don't have the time in these 2 days to cover it. So what I'm basically asking for, in a nutshell, is for the board to consider allowing us to set up a half-day, maybe a three-quarter-day meeting to have these conversations that are a mile wide and a mile deep with enforcement, so that they can, going forward, can feel confident that they've got your support and your direction. That is all I'm gonna read or discuss from the report. However, if anybody has any questions, I am available all day today and tomorrow.
Okay, are there any questions at this point, Mr. Klinkhart? Okay, hearing none. When were you thinking of setting up an extra meeting to talk about enforcement? Would this be a joint meeting with the ABC board?
You know, I was thinking about this morning, and I'll just tell you what we decided to do with them is we're putting out a poll to the board members in the next 7 days, and they're going to help pick a date. I would recommend that we do that for you as well, but let's keep them separate for now, and maybe as part of the agenda, that if there's things that cross over, we can have a separate discussion, or at least both sides, and then I'll try to meet them together. I didn't know if having everybody together would be a little much at one time, but I'll defer to the will of the board.
Okay, I think that's fine if you would send out a poll to find out when we could meet, and meeting separately may be good. I would just simply maybe ask that I, as chair, be included with the ABC meeting, and maybe have the chair of the ABC board person included in our meeting. So at least there's one person that is listening, that is a crossover before we were to, say, meet jointly, might be a good thing.
Mr. Chair, I think that's better than my idea, so thank you. We'll do that.
Okay. Are there any other questions of Mr. Klinkhart? Okay, Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, I just very quickly, there's a couple of investigations outstanding. Where are we at on those?
Oh, very good question. Through the chair, I'm actually staring at my enforcement board, and there are a number of ones, including what I consider to be large investigations that have been ongoing. I've implemented a meeting with enforcement every week, and they've been updating me. And I can tell you, without going into details, that they are progressing. There are a couple that I think we may even need to have special meetings on, because they may involve some more serious sort of things, so we'll keep you informed of that. But I don't see anything at this point that we had to bring to this meeting that is nothing huge on fire, to tell you that. But I know that there have been several investigations in the public, but I've been keeping my finger on them, and they are moving forward. And I'm hoping that we're going to have some resolution on a couple of these. I actually naming 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 of them on my board. I kind of keep a track of the larger ones. So nothing huge to report in the way of details, other than enforcement has been keeping me apprised, and I'm seeing forward momentum, and that's all I can ask at this point. Over.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, thanks for that. The two in particular I'm concerned about, just because they've been so public, are Common Collective and Great Northern Cannabis. You know, there was comments in our marijuana mailbox about those two, and you know, they were huge media items, and I'm just concerned that we're getting so far down the road with nothing happening on those that it's starting to reflect poorly on the board. That's not a criticism of you.
Oh,
I didn't mean it to sound that way at all. I just think collectively, as a group, as an entity, it's just awkward when we're not doing,
No.
we don't appear to be doing anything about this.
And I think that's the double-edged sword, because you're absolutely right. It can appear that way. And one of the things I've always told people is that, like, let's take the Great Northern Cannabis one without going into specific details. That particular case has an enormous amount of witnesses and evidence, and it has multiple layers. It isn't just marijuana regulation issues, and so our investigator had to traverse a very dense jungle of different things to stay within, our purview. And when it's explained to me like that, it's kind of one of those things that I've dealt with in my career, where sometimes you solve a murder. I think the fastest one I ever solved was about 15 minutes, but it was all laid out. Others take years, and this is one that is definitely not a sprint. It's more of a marathon, and I'm confident that the investigators are going as fast as they can, but as slow as they have to do it right on that one. As for the Coleman Collective, I think I'll defer to Joan Wilson to give you a quick little update there. And if there's any more questions, please speak up.
Ms. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, Common Collective, as you know, the matter has been sent to the Office of Administrative Hearings. We have not had a hearing on the facts because the OAH is still not operating in person. And although it is offering Zoom hearings, the respondent has requested that the judge be able to assess credibility in person via on camera. I don't know if Ms. Franklin is on the phone, but I have told her that I have had an OAH hearing recently via Zoom, and I thought it went very well, and I asked her to talk to her client about his position. We do have a status hearing on September 24th to hopefully set something in person. In the meanwhile, the administrative hold, remains completely in place. There are ongoing issues now regarding destruction of the seized product plants, but it's not impacting the case, and it's actually creating less of a public health concern if those plants are no longer in existence. I'm happy to specifically address any questions you might have, but I am a believer in due process, especially when it's the government taking action against anyone, justified or unjustified, and have not objected to the request that the hearing be in person.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Schulte?
No, thank you. Neither for the director or counsel, and I appreciate the efforts on both of your parts. And I just want to get on the record that we're not missing that. Again, I understand that these are can be very drawn out and very involved, and I agree with everything that has been said. I also just want it known that we are not ignoring those two issues. So thank you for your time.
Very good, sir.
Okay, are there any other questions of the director? Okay, hearing no more questions, we will go back to, as I stated, public testimony on non-agenda items, which had been scheduled for 9:20. We'd had 4 people testify, heard from the director, and I'm opening that back up just briefly. Is there anybody else online that was online for public testimony on non-agenda items? Okay, we'll close public testimony.
Yes. Excuse me.
Yes, who's this?
Yes, my name's Joe Egemo.
Spell your last name, please.
E-G-E-M-O.
Okay, you're on.
And I appreciate, thank you, sir. I appreciate what Director Klunkart was saying, and I just wanted to add in, are we checking into what's going on not only in the marijuana industry, but what's funding it? And as some of the other speakers have said, that's coming in from the lower 48, but through more of a hidden means with the stock market and such. And currently, the SEC and the Banking and Securities of Alaska is investigating some of these stock entities that are coming in and funding these entities in Alaska and specifically down in Southeast. They're connected with unlegal doings is the best word I can use.
Okay. Are there any questions of Mr. Edgemo?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schulte?
Yeah, thanks. I'm not sure how to phrase this. I realize you're trying to be specific without being entirely specific, but can you offer any more details about what we're talking about?
Sure. You know, and this has been written in the, I can't remember, I believe Mr. Miller was the one who mentioned it last time. It's written in the internet and it's put out with penny stock and Ponzi schemes. They put out these internet news articles to make people excited about hype. And that's what they sell is hype. And Mr. Miller, I believe, mentioned it in the last hearing that I listened to, that some of these stock companies have come into Alaska kind of unbeknownst to us, and we don't realize they are there. And they are funding these little tiny companies, which are known as shell companies. And a shell company is just basically a piece of paper. And they fund this piece of paper, but this piece of paper, like some of the things other people were worried about, is how do we stop these big companies from coming into Alaska? Well, that's exactly what's happening with these shell companies. They come in and fund these little shell companies, but by funding it, they have full control. So you have people, and you should really check the background. Some of these people are felons, and I know you guys have the resources to do it, and I don't claim to have your resources. But just kicking around on the internet a little bit, you will find that these people have felonies, but they are using a shadow company or to hide their investment, but to truly control the company so they can do as they will from the lower 48. And I know that's not our objective as Alaskans.
All right, thanks. I don't have any further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that wants to testify on non-agenda items on public testimony?
I have one more, if I'm allowed to, please. My name's Joe Egamo.
Mr. Egmo, please.
Thank you, sir. As far as people that have broken the law, and it's been documented by AMCO, and they've showed to have severe amounts of illegal marijuana within their facilities. What happens with that? I want to learn. These go on, and I understand state and federal operations like the SEC and the banking and securities take quite some time. But with Alaska and the marijuana industry, when these entities are found to have severe amounts of undocumented marijuana, which is only one thing it can be, and we're talking pounds and pounds, not 1 pound, but 50 and 60 plus pounds of marijuana. And marijuana is sold in grams. So when you go to grams, this is a lot of marijuana. How is that ever dealt with? And I understand there's been a changing in leadership and all, but how is that dealt with from a year and a half ago to today? And there's still not an explanation of what happened.
Mr. Egmo, rather than us deal with that as a board, if you could send an email to Mr. Klinkhart and or Ms. Wilson, our attorney, and ask those questions, then within the limits of our ability to disclose those information publicly, they can respond. But I will let them deal with that rather than us deal with it during public testimony.
I understand. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chair. Mr. Chair? Director Klinkhart?
Mr. Schulte. Oh, Mr. Klinkhart.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I want to thank Mr. Egmo, and I would actually also invite him to, once we get a date for our enforcement, some of those things that I think it'd be good to have the public also hear, because we're going to talk about our processes. We're going to talk about civil investigations versus criminal, and that he's touched on a lot of that. So I would invite him and the rest of the public that once we get that date to please attend and listen in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other public testimony? All right, hearing none, I will close public testimony again at 9:42. And on my agenda, I show that we are at tab 3, the status of working groups. I think Mr. Klinkhardt has addressed some of that. Is there anything you would like to add to that, Mr. Miller?
There is not. I would like to thank Mr. Klinkhardt because the day of the meeting, unfortunately, I was stuck on an aircraft that was grounded for mechanical. But I think the team that did get together that day did a great job, and I'm pretty excited about getting these working groups moving forward.
Okay. Is there anything else, Mr. Klinkhardt, on working groups? It's tab 3.
I don't think so, other than the process, I think worked fairly well. It's something that I want it to be cookie cutter, that we can then copy and paste. And I think one of the things that came out was working with the staff to kind of moderate it online, worked out very well. I think the next step is that we're going to continue to move this along and hopefully maybe have a status meeting. But I would like the board to now seriously think about and consider what would be the next, since we can't do a lot of working groups at one time, probably just one at a time, please think about what you would want the next one to be, and so we can kind of load ideas and working groups in the front end rather than us go 3 months down the road or 4 and just kind of be behind, because I want to keep the momentum going. That's really all I had to add. Thank you.
Okay. I would refer people back. Mr. Klinkhardt can give me the date. We had a special meeting on some other things, and we talked about the working group at that meeting. I would refer people back to those documents that are in there as you think about that, and maybe under board member comments at the end of the agenda, we can talk about the next status of the working groups, or which ones we might want to bring forward. Okay, so we are now on to tab 4, which is the Enforcement Supervisor's Report. Mr. Holscher, are you online?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am.
Thank you, James. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you, and I hope the rest of you and yourself are doing as well as can be expected.
Well, you know, cooped up in a sunshiny day, I don't know. But anyway, Mr. Holscher, your report, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just, I want to address a few things. I don't know who told Director Klinkhardt that we were winging it. That might not be the description I would use. I think rolling with the punches might be a little more accurate, at least from my perspective. And I just want to remind the board and the public and the licensees that enforcement kind of marches to the beat of the board's drum. And with that being said, not only that, the director's drum as well. And mind you guys selves that the players and the instruments often change. And enforcement, what we may be doing right now, or what we have been doing in the past few years, is something that has been directed to us by previous boards or previous directors. We're definitely a lot like, I don't want to compare us to children, but we need direction in order to achieve what the board is requesting. And if we don't have that direction, unfortunately, what you get is the appearance of winging it. And like most law enforcement, we kind of run with a systematic approach. And I would encourage the board, when we do have these enforcement meetings, really to be open-minded on both sides. I definitely want to make sure that number one priority is that the people of Alaska are safe. And, you know, keeping the hand of marijuana and alcohol out of the hands of under 21 is always a top priority as well. The rest of the things, we're just here to bring facts to you guys. We're here to look into things, ask questions, and bring them to you in a completely objective view. So I just wanted to say that prior to my report, and with that, you guys have my report. It is fairly lengthy, but it does, and more than anything, it kind of explains where we're at in the state of things. And as you can see, our stats have taken a huge hit from not being able to be as active as we generally are prior to COVID, and I included stats from the years before in previous meetings, and I'm including the stats as now. So I just want to let you know that this decrease in stats is completely not the norm for enforcement. And we look forward to a time where we can get back out and be a little more proactive, at least in person. And with that, enforcement has tried to view this as try to look for a silver lining, I guess. And one of the ways of doing that is having a little more time to review policies, procedures, talk and look at things from, again, I've mentioned this before, from a 10,000-foot view, and see what we can change and see how we can make improvements. One of those things that we're getting a little better at, but still never can replace in-person inspections, is virtual inspections. I've kind of made it a point lately where we do very little virtual inspections for marijuana, simply because of the expertise and the visual expertise needed to identify problems or issues before they become larger problems, if you will. And virtual inspections they're better than not doing anything. But at the same time, there can be some small minor problem at the time or it appears to be minor at the time, that can lead to very large issues down the road. So we're trying to button up those types of things, and any recommendations, any licensees or any of the board has, we're more than willing to listen to feedback from anybody. So we recommend that you guys contact us, send us an email. Let us know what worked during a virtual inspection and what didn't, and what maybe you guys could do to help improve the industry. So that sums it up for my report. I did have something I kind of wanted to add that I promised Jason that I would ask, because it's a good question, but I feel that it needs board input. And I feel semi-comfortable with moving forward on it, but at the same time, I don't feel comfortable making that decision on my own. And what it is we got approached by a cultivator who asked if they could package up marijuana flower, kind of in the form of, for lack of a better word, of some kind of floral arrangement, to give as a gift. And this would include the stems, some of the stems, the flower, some of the things that generally are put in as waste. And I didn't have an immediate answer to that, because we do allow cultivators to package multiple strains of marijuana, like into pre-rolls. And as long as it's labeled correctly, where if they're pulling from a package that has been tested and they move it into one package with that weight, that's fine. But the problem that I kind of run into is the weight of that stem, that stalk, which is not marijuana, is included into that weight. And I guess that kind of falls on the cultivator a little bit, because that's going to be included towards the cost of tax. But my question is with all that being said, is making something and tying a bow on it, or making it look like a floral arrangement, considered a product by the board?
Is there any comment from the board members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Bruce Schulte.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, thanks, Chief Holster. That is a really interesting question. And what comes to mind is retail stores that are selling plants. And I'm kind of wondering if, between the dried flower and extracts and concentrates and so forth, and a live plant, there's some room for a classification or definition of cuttings.
Well, I don't think so, because the reason why we allow loans and cuttings to be transferred or sold without being tested is because they are not something that is readily able to be consumed, and there's no THC content, or very little THC content, I should say. But it's not ready for consumption or not able to be consumed at that point in time, whereas the floral arrangement would be. So and this is kind of, it's been one of those things where you try to look at it and then you feel like you answer it, but then something else pops up. And I apologize for bringing this to the board. I generally don't do this unless we absolutely get kind of stuck, and we're stuck.
Follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Scholey.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, and I guess I was thinking that these cuttings would be in the sort of analogous to the ferns that you might get at a floral shop. You know, they put together, you know, various sort of non-flower additives just to kind of complete a bouquet. But I was thinking that these would be immature cuttings, not flower that is simply fresh off the stalk. So are we talking about buds that have simply been harvested but not dried and processed, or are we talking about just the leaves and stems of immature plants?
I'm waiting for a picture from Jason, and I'm looking at it right. Or wait, I asked for a picture, and they said that they didn't send one. From reading what was written to us, it sounds like they're asking for flower, like bud and flower, after it's been trimmed, or mostly trimmed and ready to, after it's been sent to testing. So with those things being said, I think we're talking about the latter, the actual marijuana flower and bud that would be harvested from the marijuana. So I don't want to assume things, but my powers of deduction tell me that it is the latter, not flowers from immature or leaves from immature plants.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I don't have a suggestion other than, I mean, it seems like it'd be something worthy of further discussion, but it sounds like it definitely requires some clarification about which type of, you know, if we're talking about immature cuttings or mature flower. Don't really have a suggestion at the moment. But
Through the chair. Any other, Mr. Miller?
Hi. You know, I guess at the end of the day, it's marijuana. It's got to be weighed. And if they can get a bouquet out of 28 grams of a few buds and some stems, I mean, I see lots of problems with this. But one problem I don't see is they should be able to do it, if that makes sense. It's flower. Sometimes we get flower that are on the stems today. You know, we have to cut it off and weigh it, the whole 9 yards. They're not altering it, so it's just being packaged. I would say, yeah, in my opinion, it can be done. You know, although, you know, there's lots of problems they would have to work out, like the packaging when it leaves the retail facility. None of that changes regardless of how big it is. So those would be things they would have to consider, but I don't see an issue with it because they're not altering it. They're not adding anything to it. It's just a raw flower and stem. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Okay. Any other comments from board members? Okay, I have a couple of comments, and it revolves around one word that Mr. Holscher used, and then a word that Mr. Miller used.
He's down there now.
Somebody's got a conversation going on. Could they mute your phone, please? So Mr. Holscher said that this was a cultivator who wanted to know if they could package a floral arrangement as a gift. Cultivators can sell to manufacturers and retail. They may not sell to
Mr.
consumers
Chairman?
directly? Yes, Mr. Holzer.
Maybe, I apologize. Before you go any further, and maybe I should have clarified a little more. I guess what I meant to say was packages as a gift to be transferred to a retailer so somebody can view it as an item to give to their loved one or something, like a floral arrangement, not as a gift to give away to the individual. So I just want to make that clarification, and I'm sorry for the confusion.
Okay, well then that ties in with what Mr. Miller said when it leaves the retail shop. So I'm assuming that a retailer perhaps has wanted a cultivator to put together an arrangement to sell to the retailer who can then sell to a consumer. I guess I wouldn't have any problem with that arrangement. It is bud and flower, which can be packaged and sold in 5-pound packages or 10-pound packages to a retailer. So I don't see any reason to package that up as a single piece that could be then sold by a retailer. We allow cultivators to package to be sold by a retailer without being repackaged. Yeah, I would agree that I don't see any issue. Just wanted to be clear that this is a cultivator packaging at a specific request of a retailer, and then it's being sold at the retail and taxed appropriately at the retail and taxed appropriately at the cultivator. I would not see any problem with that. It's not altering, it's not manufacturing anything to avoid that issue. So I think I would agree with Mr. Scholey and Mr. Miller that, as long as it's correct and metric and could somebody please mute their phone? That's not working, is it? So anyway, Mr. Holscher, does that help or hurt?
No, it helps. It definitely was the way we were leaning, but because I was unclear if this would be considered a product, I just did not want to make that determination on my own, and I appreciate the board's feedback, and we'll notify the licensee that this does not appear to be an issue, and they just got to follow all the other regulations regarding testing, packaging, and everything else. With that being said, I would appreciate it if the board does have any questions or concerns for enforcement or myself, or any questions regarding my report itself, please ask. And with that,
any questions? Okay, any questions of Mr. Holscher? Okay, I am not hearing any, Mr. Holscher, so thank you very much, and I appreciate the concise report. And you always bring us interesting questions, and I appreciate that. It makes me think a little bit early in the morning. We have tab 5, which is notice of violations, and I believe there is one notice of violation in here. Are there any questions of Mr. Holscher related to the NOV, related to the fire supply? Okay, I don't hear any questions on the notice of violations. And so we are down to notice of violations for unpaid taxes. It's noted on here that there were no NOVs for unpaid taxes because the Department of Revenue has stalled payment of taxes until July 15th, 2020. AMCO has not received a report of delinquent taxpayers from the Department of Revenue since 3/20/2020. Ms. Wilson, can you, reading this and thinking about what the governor has done in terms of COVID and suspending particular regulations, and maybe this is a question of Chief Holscher and or maybe Mr. Miller, who's involved in cultivation. Is this in essence that none of our cultivators have paid any taxes? Or does this mean if they pay the taxes, that's fine, but if they don't, nobody's going to enforce it until later? Somebody's phone is not on mute, and we're getting a lot of static. If you could put your phones on mute, please, if you're not testifying before the board. Sounds like somebody's got an open window while they're driving in a car. Ms. Wilson, what's the status? Are cultivators paying taxes and there's just no reports, or basically are the Department of Revenue not receiving any revenue from taxes?
I can get you a report on that from the banking and securities attorney, sir. I don't know the answer at present.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board related to taxes? Okay. Well, this will come up on a couple of licensees later on, I'm sure.
I'll talk to you and get you a status.
All right. I'd appreciate that, because maybe Mr. Miller can tell me he's probably harvested from some of his businesses in the last 3 or 4 months. And
I can tell you this, that I can tell you this much, that I have been paying my taxes every month, and I run into cultivators while I'm there paying taxes as well. But I do know that I believe that the Department of Revenue gave some leeway to the businesses. If they needed it, they could take advantage of it. But, you know, I don't know that much about it because I've been paying anyway. So.
Okay. Well, I just think for those on the industry that are listening, if you have the money, pay your taxes. You should have the money if you sell. I know some have said, well, with COVID and competition, you know, there's a bottom line, but if you haven't sold the product, you don't owe the tax. If you sold the product, you should be able to pay the tax, and people need to pay their taxes. Because once this COVID is over and the governor lifts that restriction, somebody's going to come looking for their money. And if you haven't paid taxes in 3 or 4 or 5 months, and suddenly the Department of Revenue says, we want it all today, I hope you all can pay it, because we don't want to have more problems caused in December when they come looking for all of their 6 months of taxes, and we suddenly have half the industry that is behind on their taxes. It's not going to help us much. So please, the industry, be aware. This doesn't absolve you from paying the taxes. It just means that you don't have to, maybe you won't be enforced to pay it, but sooner or later the tax man will come. So with that, unless there's any other questions on the taxation, we will move forward. Okay, so we're on to tab 6, which is the licensing report. Ms. Craig.
Good morning, board members. I will try to keep this brief. I'm just going to highlight a few things in my report. The stats are in there if you want to take a look at those. So our vacant occupational licensing examiner position was offered to Nathan Hall. His first day was July 22nd. He comes from the Department of Public Assistance. He has a great deal of experience working with statutes and regulation requirements, as long as processing and reviewing applications for accuracy and working within strict deadlines and in stressful situations. I additionally want to, or specifically, give a special shout out to Jane Sawyer, our regulations specialist.
Can't hear you.
She has offered her valuable time and expertise to the marijuana licensing team. Yes?
Carrie, can you speak up a little bit? There was a comment that you can't be heard.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So back to you. I want to give a special shout out to Jane Sawyer, our regulation specialist. She has offered her valuable time and expertise to the marijuana licensing team by assisting them with processing renewal applications and responding to a majority of their email correspondence. She's been a great, valuable asset to our team during these crazy times. Additionally, I do want to thank and recognize the entire licensing staff for all their hard work and dedication during these last few months. As a reminder to marijuana licensees, I just want to say, if you fail to submit your complete renewal application and payment of all fees before August 31st, 2020, the license will expire. Any holder of an expired license who wishes to operate in the future must file a new license application. So please get in contact with our marijuana licensing team via email at marijuana.licensing@alaska.gov. And also, I do want to remind everyone that our staff is always working very diligently to keep wait times the shortest possible. But please keep in mind that applicants may experience a longer waiting period due to the current renewal season as well as the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, and I am open for any questions.
Board, you there? We've lost Lauren.
Oh, I'm on mute. I'm sorry. Are there any questions of Ms. Craig on the licensing report?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, if I may.
Mr. Schulte.
As always, I just want to thank Carrie and the rest of the team for all your hard work. You guys are awesome. And I want to welcome Nathan Hall on board. Nathan and I are both aspiring comedians. We've done a bunch of shows together, so it's great to have him on the team. So welcome, Nathan.
Claim to fame.
Okay. It's a very, very small claim.
A very, very small claim. All right, are there any other questions of Ms. Craig?
Through the chair.
Okay, here, Mr. Miller.
I'm not sure if this is the proper place to ask the question, but you can let me know. Curious about the renewals and when folks could expect to see a temporary license or a letter letting them know that their license has been temporarily approved.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Craig.
This is Jane.
Oh, Jane? Sorry.
Yes, Jane Sawyer. Yes. So let me just expand a little bit upon Carrie's report. Last week, what I did, I sent out a letter to two categories. So the first category was for people who have been deemed complete by the staff and have not received a renewed license because it takes some time to get there. So they got a letter stating that letter would serve as their temporary, and I listed the license numbers that are under that category. The second one is for people that are still in the queue and licensing has just not gotten to it, but they're working on it. And that letter is good through September 30th. And I will be reassessing the queue and resending updated letters to these people. So that is the status. I'm not going to actually get a piece of paper that says license, is just a letter. But
Mr. Miller, any follow-up?
Do we expect to get to the queue by August 31st? That's the requirement, right?
It's not the requirement of the office to get to it by 8/31st. I don't see, it's already 8/19, and I don't see the licensing team getting to that queue by 8/31. There are about 135 licenses in the queue right now to be reviewed by an examiner. There are only two of them.
Okay, and I'm not trying to give you guys a hard time. I know you're working hard, but as a license holder, I have certain agreements with different entities that require me to provide a copy of my renewal or a copy of a letter saying that I'm renewed. So I'm going to dig into this a little bit. If you don't get to somebody who's in the queue by the 31st, will they receive anything from you saying that their license is temporarily approved until it gets through the process?
Yes. So they have received. They have received a letter stating something along those lines, and I will be reassessing the queue So after last week of sending that letter saying you are good through September 30th, before September 30th, I will be reassessing the queue and sending the letters, whether that is a letter that says you've been deemed complete, this is your letter is a temporary, or sending another temporary letter.
Okay. All right.
Is that good enough for? And that was one of my questions when I was thinking about these letters. Is that good enough for what you guys deal with?
Well, it's working for me. I would just say other businesses don't, like my point of sale company, they require me obviously to have a valid license for me to purchase and use their software. I'm sure other businesses are going through the same thing. And I just want to make sure that we think about that to make sure we get some kind of notice, folks, hopefully not on the 31st, because, they're going to have to work with different businesses out there that require the license for them to license their software and things like that. So,
okay. So the other thing that I wanted to...
That's why I was digging into it a bit. I'm definitely not giving you a hard time. I just want to make sure that, on the 31st, a business doesn't lose access to a tool that they need to stay open. Because
yeah, no, I understand that completely, and I appreciate that. Just so you also know, so you guys know, everybody knows, I did update their expiration date to 2021, so they shouldn't have problems with Metric at the end of this month. And if you guys do, then contact me. You can contact me directly, or the marijuana licensing, so I don't put my email out there. And if it's not working for some of you, I can definitely print a temporary license. It's an actual temporary license that I can mail to you. But it's just very time consuming, and I'm not making excuses. I can do it. I'll work to get it done. But it takes me an hour to go through a process of printing 10 licenses. And thank you.
Any follow-up, Mr. Miller?
No, thank you. I just hoping licensees are on the phone listening, so they understand the process and understand that, and I wanted AMCO to understand as well that as businesses we rely on outside vendors, and a lot of those require a copy of our license or a copy of our temporary license to continue to service.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Is there any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Tab 7, which is the COVID-19 curbside spreadsheet. Ms. Craig or Mr. Klinkhart?
Good morning. This is Carrie. I just wanted to add this in here so you guys could see the different companies who are currently participating in the curbside or the window or online orders due to the COVID pandemic. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Director Klinkhart, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Klinkhart.
Yeah, and we've been very busy on the ABC side with their kind of COVID curbside sort of things, but I want people to see that if you notice anybody who's not on this list, I'm not interested in getting people in trouble, but I'm more interested in finding out that all they need to do is make the application so that we can make sure they're doing it safely and their plan is good. So if you do notice you're not on there or somebody else isn't on there, just please have them contact us so we can help them make sure that that they're doing the process safely for everybody. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board related to tab 7? Okay. Hearing none. So the next item is tab 8, and Mr. Shade, are you online?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
About how long is your presentation?
So Rob Carter, our state agronomist, and I got about probably 20 minutes.
Okay. Do you mind if we take a 10-minute break before we get started?
That would be absolutely fine, sir.
Okay. All right. So I show that it is 10:16, and so we will come back to order at 10:30. So just stay on the line, mute your phone, and we will take about a 14-minute break here. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Hi, Rob. This is Dave. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Dave. This is Rob. I can hear you just fine.
All right. So you're a little quiet.
I'll move closer.
Okay. Try it again.
Can you hear me better now?
Oh, yeah. That's better. All right. I think we're set up. Thanks.
Bruce is back.
Okay, this is Lauren back about 10:27. Mr. Jaime, are you back online? Mr. Miller, are you back online?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Schulte, are you back online?
I'm here.
Mr.
This is
DeShock,
Jaime,
are
I'm
you
back
back
online.
online? Oh, okay, Chris.
Yep.
Casey, you're back. Okay.
I am.
All right. Mr. Klinkard, are you back online? Is Craig, are you back online?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
And we're back recording, or soon will be?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Wilson, you back online?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. It's 10:28. We have board members back, staff back on recording. So we are on to tab 8. David Shade, Division Director from the Department of Natural Resources, related to the Industrial Hemp Pilot Program. And tab 8, you have a PowerPoint. So Mr. Shade, if you are back online, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's Shady. Just remember Shady.
Oh, Shady. Okay. All right.
So I always tell people that. They laugh, but I've been around a while, and most people know me. So today I have with me Rob Carter. He's the state agronomist. He's actually in charge of running our industrial hemp pilot program. So we've got a presentation for you. We will. I found some technical edits. We'll fix the date in that, and then we'll post that on our website for the public to see, so they can go back and look at that when we're done. So if at any time during this presentation you have questions, feel free to break in and ask them, because we want this to be a broad discussion. Your director, Mr. Klinkart, and I have been routinely talking to each other about issues, and I think it will be helpful to continue this communication as we go forward. So, page 1, yes, we are still operating under the Alaska Industrial Hemp Pilot Program set by Senate Bill 6 a few years back, and so we started on that. So, tab 2. So when you look at tab 2, you'll see 2 logos. We are the Department of Natural Resources Division of Agriculture, and we're running this program through our Plant Materials Center. These are our agronomists, the folks that know about growing plants and testing things. So you'll see 2 logos. The one on the right is the division logo, which was just updated and put into play here a couple months ago. And then on the left, you'll see an Alaska Industrial Hemp logo. And as we go through this presentation, you'll understand that that logo is going to be real important for people to look for as we go out into the marketplace, because our registrants are going to be using that logo. So again, who we are, that's tab 3. I'm Dave Shady. I'm the director of the Division of Agriculture here for the state, and so my job is to run all the programs that the division has, including the Industrial Hemp Pilot Program. And Rob Carter is the state agronomist, and I'm going to let Rob pick it up from here, say who he is, and then we'll go down through the tabs and discuss as we move forward. So, Rob.
Good morning. I guess for the record, this is Rob Carter, the state agronomist. I work for the Division of Agriculture. I have the pleasure to manage and operate the Plant Materials Center located in Palmer, technically and geographically in the Butte. As my director said, Dave Shady, I am the state agronomist and currently operating, one of the programs I operate here is the Industrial Hemp Pilot Program. If anybody is looking at this slideshow presentation, I think we start off with the first and foremost important thing that a lot of individuals actually that are under the jurisdiction of AMCO and this program may have received this letter here in the previous weeks. We call it our compliance memo. And so that you get familiar with it, this was sent out to anyone and everyone that we know that currently offers for sale or may have interested in offering for sale industrial hemp or industrial hemp derivative. Just as a general reminder that there is both federal and state law that requires anyone to produce processes or retails industrial hemp or industrial hemp derivatives to do so both in state and federally. They must be registered with a state program, and that is us. So it's just a reminder letter, really, to go out there. The program was initiated and rolled out April 4th of this year, although there's been a lot of communication previous to that with Senate Bill 6, and even previous to that with other state legislation that was moving along. Really, this is a reminder. I think it was a really good reminder to a lot of folks that may have been aware of our program, both the federal law and the state law, and they have now contacted us. We've seen a pretty significant increase in requests and applications for producers, processors, and retailers, as well as products that are being offered for sale in the state and them receiving an endorsement through our program. So one question we get generally, and a lot of these slides you will see that are questions that we get often, and so we were trying to use this opportunity to try to educate as much as we can on why. So on slide 5, you'll see is why do we have an industrial hemp. You'll see I've abbreviated that to IH. That's how we generally reference it to shorten it down. Why we have an industrial hemp program. Section 706 or 7606 of the 2014 Farm Bill had a legitimacy of industrial hemp clause or portion within it, where the federal government saw the request from states saying, why aren't we looking at industrial hemp as another agricultural crop? Highly sponsored out of Kentucky, because they were looking for a replacement for a failing or obsolete tobacco industry. That section said, hey, we're going to check this out in a very general way. Let's find out if it can be grown, if it can be produced at a THC concentration low enough that we feel there's a specific differentiation between it and recreational cannabis. So all states kind of started looking and seeing if they had the legal ability to do so. It took a few years for most states to get the legislation and the law in place so they could promulgate regulations within their state to accept registrations within their states to follow that federal guidance. Again, in 2018, really technically signed in early 2019, the 2018 Farm Bill now says that, yes, it is a legitimate industry. They made some changes, added some additional requirements, descheduled cannabis sativa that tests below 0.3% as a Schedule I drug. Again, as long as the registrants or the producers, processors, or marketers within the state are either registered with their state program or directly with the USDA. At that time, this is also where Alaska's Senate Bill 6 comes in and gives us at the Division of Agriculture the law to be able to regulate industrial hemp in the state of Alaska. As we move on, I said April 4th was our effective date. Since then, we've had a significant amount of interest. I would say that our current viral load has changed that where we thought we would be this year. We had a lot of interest in production, and as it came through and people looked at their production practices, looked at the ability to market the product that they would produce, a lot of them said, hey, I'll try again next year. For just the record of everyone, we have 70 registered acres in the state of Alaska this season. Not all of those have been confirmed being growth. We're actually currently out looking at those fields now, so we will be able to update of actually planted and produced numbers here shortly. We have 9,000 square feet of greenhouse space or controlled environment production that's registered. And as we move through that, I think every year we'll get more. I think we'll start to see more controlled environment production through the winter as people kind of begin to trial industrial hemp plants for production, for quality, and start testing the market. If you move on to slide 6, this is really about our program.
Rob, let me break in here.
Go ahead, Director.
So the one thing that I just got a question in the last couple of weeks from the USDA. So as Rob mentioned, you either have to be in a state program or under the federal USDA program. One of the problems that has developed, we're still operating under state law, under the pilot bill. The legislature adjourned without passing our updates to our industrial hemp. So effective October, if the Congress doesn't do an extension of 1 year, which has been requested by Alaska and other states and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, effective October, if you want to operate, our state program can still continue as a pilot program, but we will not be under the federal law. And if you want to sell multi-state, you would be in the quandary of signing up for the USDA program. So because the legislature didn't pass the update to the bill, we can't, as the state, meet the requirements of the 18 Farm Bill. I really believe that we'll have an extension of 1 year for the pilot program. There are some issues. We allow blending below one.
Mr. Shady, you don't mind. There's some conversation going on in the background. We are trying to have a presentation. Could you please mute your phones or stop your conversations so that we can proceed with our board meeting? And Mr. Shady, you dropped off just after you said after October 1st without an extension, we wouldn't be under the federal program, and I'm not sure I quite understood that. So if you could go back over that, please. Please, people, somebody's on the phone having a side conversation. Please mute your phone. Mr. Shady, please. Did we lose Mr. Shady or Mr. Carter?
Sir, this is Rob Carter. I am here. We may have lost the director. He may have
okay.
Dave, was that you that came back on? Well, I'll go ahead and continue. Again, this is Rob Carter for the Division of Ag until the director can work through telecommunication issues, I'm sure, is what happened there. So as he was stating, the state of Alaska has law and regulations based on the 2014 Farm Bill, which is the Industrial Hemp Pilot Program. The conversion to the 2018 Farm Bill has some changes, and those changes we in the state of Alaska do not currently have the law to implement. One of those being background checks for individuals that are participations in the program, some legal language on how we enforce products that or plants that are grown that are above the 0.3% delta-9 on a dry weight basis. There's some enforcement language in there. And without an update to our statute here within the state of Alaska, we do not have the authority to change our regulations to meet that 2018 Farm Bill. So
Rob,
yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, this is Joan Wilson. The other thing that I think is important for this group is that the 2018 Farm Bill expanded the definition of industrial hemp to make very clear that extracts and derivatives are considered industrial hemp for purposes of the program. So I just wanted to add that in. The definition was clear in 2014, but in 2018 they made it more express.
Thank you, Joan, very much.
That, Rob. Yeah.
Oh, no, thank you very much. I am by no means a lawyer. I am a plant person, so that is what we do, and I depend highly on the people that have that knowledge base, because I do not. But from this, I think we'll see changes. I do think that we'll see legislation and our statute changed so that we can better align and submit a state program to the USDA for approval. The one difficulty there, the director was stating, it may be difficult for an industrial hemp producer in the state of Alaska to enter into commerce products produced and processed in the state, and then of course do interstate commerce, because we will not have a USDA compliant program as of October 31st this year if the USDA chooses not to extend the program. As the director said, it is more than likely that will be extended for a multitude of reasons. A lot of state regulators have had difficulties with the 2018 program. Some of the consistency among states has made this difficult, and so we are proceeding as we are a 2014 industrial hemp pilot program, and look forward to making modifications to our program to meet those federal guidelines to help this industry develop in Alaska. To move on, if you go to slide 6, it looks like I just got a message from the director. Yes, something happened with his phone. He's working to get back online, but we will continue along.
Okay.
If you go to slide 6 of this presentation, this is a screenshot of our webpage here at the Plant Material Center, Division of Ag, and this is our program participation. There are 4 types, really, of registrations. One was actually an endorsement. If you would like to grow industrial hemp in the state of Alaska, you can sign up and an application to be a registered grower. The same as so forth for a processor. A processor is someone that is taking raw industrial hemp and converting it to something else. There's really 2 caveats to that. One, that an individual is processing for human consumption, and as well as someone that is processing for non-human consumption. A retailer registration is for anyone that is offering for sale raw industrial hemp or industrial hemp derivatives. So that would be probably a majority of the people that may be listening at the phone call. If they are offering for sale, we'll use the elephant in the room because it's the biggest one out and about right now is CBD. If you are offering for sale industrial hemp-derived CBD, both federal and state law require you to be a registrant of an industrial hemp pilot program at this time. Those products also must carry a valid endorsement with our program, and that is a way for us to validate, one, again, that they are industrial hemp derived and they meet the federal definition and concentration of THC, and two, that they don't carry any contaminants within those products. We get a lot of questions about this because we have, I would say, relatively defined contaminant testing levels, and the reason for that is that we believe that majority of the industrial hemp derivatives that are being consumed by individuals are for wellness. You may not make any health claims. The FDA is very, very specific about that, but we do understand that people take these and consume these or absorb these products for wellness and for their well-being, and in that sense, we want to make sure that those products are as clean and as safe as they possibly can be for consumers. When we looked at developing this industry for our ag industry as well as for businesses in Alaska to generate revenue, we looked around the country, we've looked around the world, and we want to make sure that when people speak of industrial hemp products coming from a state or a country, that they look to Alaska and say, those are the cleanest and highest quality products available on the market today. There are fees associated with each of these. I believe that they are very reasonable if you compare them to other pilot programs around the country. They're generally about 50% of what other states are charging, and we will be evaluating that, as the law says, annually to make sure that it is fair and equitable to not only us for operating the program, but for the businesses involved. We do and have noticed through this, we have learned through this process, especially in the last 4 or 5 months, that we do need to make some regulation updates to provide some other avenues, clarify some stuff for businesses that are working within industrial hemp. If we move on to slide 7, we look at kind of the current industrial hemp market. This is a pretty simple clip here that shows you. We have some newer information for 18 and 19, but this looks at global hemp cultivation. These are in acreage. Surprisingly enough, in 2017, the United States is really close to ranking in 3rd, and I believe that has gone up this year to just over 40. So we've seen a significant increase. I think there's some pretty interesting stats in the bullets below that people should keep an eye on. Global retail sales have been at 3.7 billion in 2018. I think in 19 we saw just over 4 billion, and they're projecting it to be at 5.7 billion by this year. And we won't see those stats until probably the beginning of the second quarter of 2021 calendar year. In the United States, $1 billion of that dollars was generated from industrial hemp sales. I think those are pretty impressive numbers. I think that supply and demand are starting to balance out, and I think there's an opportunity for Alaska businesses to take part and generate revenue from this global market. As we move on, we can take a look at our slide number 9. This is a few photos of our program here some industrial hemp that we do. Our program future, I think that number one is we need to continue research and trialing of industrial hemp. There's a multitude of varieties out there. We have just over 275 on our approved list for production. We will evaluate those every growing season to make sure that they are falling within the federal guidelines and the defined 0.3% THC or lower. But we need to continue to do that research. We need to continue to trial both at our farm and with our registered growers to find cultivars and varieties of industrial hemp that are applicable to different regions of Alaska, just like we do with any other agricultural crop. As I mentioned previously, there are some regulation updates we need to do that we believe would make this a much simpler product to help grow this industry, to take some of the burden off of them and us, all the while still keeping a good grasp on the products that are out there, the products that are being produced, and of course the crops that are being grown here within the state. We do require some statutory changes that the director was talking about before he had some phone problems. we do need those changes to come into compliance so that we have a better opportunity to market industrial hemp interstate. That doesn't affect our global export, but it will affect our interstate commerce if the FDA and USDA come through with following the 2018 Farm Bill as of October 31st. We need to continue our agency collaboration between the folks of this board and all the participants of your program, as well as DEC, because there is joint jurisdiction there. DEC is the experts in food. That is something that we do not regulate. That is something they regulate. So we need to make sure that anybody that's offering for sale industrial hemp derivatives as a food or an additive to food, that they're in compliance with DEC's regulations as well. And again, that is strictly for the consumer protection and food safety. I would say that we have a lot of room to work there and a lot of room to grow, and hoping that individuals in the recreational cannabis industry as well as DEC can come together later this fall or this winter and assist us with our regulation changes, so that we can make sure that it's not onerous on the business nor on the other sister agencies that are regulating cannabis around the state of Alaska. I think that there's one thing that is not on this slideshow. I think it must have missed. A big question has been and come to us and should have been there is industrial hemp additives to pet food. When we're referencing pet food from our perspective, and as the agency that has statutory authority to regulate it, that also includes pet treats. All those must be informed that it is the FDA in the United States that regulates pet food, which includes pet treats, and I will continue to use the word pet food. All products or animal food are subject to an approved additive petition, or they must be generally recognized as safe or GRAS for their intended use for the intended species. And so what is important there is that the FDA has not recognized any industrial hemp, any cannabis derivatives as a approved food additive or generally recognized as safe. So that is that we know, and everyone else is very aware, that the products are being offered for sale within the state, manufactured most likely out of state, some now within the state. The FDA does not find that a legal avenue until those derivatives have been subject to the approved food additive. So it is interesting, and without the FDA or the USDA coming out and defining that more specifically for us, we believe that it will continually to be illegal to add cannabis to pet food. There are some caveats to that we will be looking at during our regulation updates. We do believe that industrial hemp can be added to pet food as long as that product within the state of Alaska, offered for sale within the state of Alaska, as long as that product was produced here, processed here, and is being marketed within our state. We believe that our endorsement of our product, our testing requirements for contaminants, does allow that to be an approved source to be added to animal food. This is for industrial hemp. You see a lot of products for pet feed out there that contain CBD for their wellness benefits to our furry friends. So we will continue to make sure that those products are tested, that they're safe, and get them endorsed with our program. If you start to look at pet feed and pet food and additives beyond those that are industrial hemp that may contain higher quantities of THC, that is a question where we ourselves, maybe AMCO, as well as the state vet's office, need to get into communication and identify the risks to animals, their ability to process cannabinoids, which is very different than us as humans, and see if even maybe through the Animal Medicinal Drug Use Clarification Act of '94, I believe, if there's a caveat to that there may be an option for Alaskan businesses to pursue that avenue. But it's going to, before that will be a legal avenue, I believe. There's a lot of work to be done to make sure, again, that the products are safe and that they follow all applicable laws. So really from us, that's a general update on our program. I know that I looked at the agenda and it talks about CBD and the legalities. We are only speaking of CBD that is derived from industrial hemp and the regulatory framework from our program. Again, if you're producing and are registered or participant under AMCO, the floral material that you're extracting or offer for sale does carry high concentrations of CBD or other cannabinoids, but it's derived from a recreational cannabis plant. We have no jurisdiction over that. We are only and have the only jurisdiction over CBD derived from industrial hemp. So to make that very clear for everyone. And to move on to slide 10, really we wanted to open this up and give a few minutes for comments or questions from anybody. And we'd actually greatly appreciate those because we learn from people's questions, and then we generally can keep those, and during presentations or other public outreach opportunities, we can answer those to the general public.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Carter. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, this is Stacy.
Mr. DeShock.
So one question I have is just going forward for clarification on this. For industrial hemp, do we have an idea from the department how we would handle revolving loans, applications for funding through the state to invest in industrial hemp if you are farming? Would that be something that the state would be willing to fund through the revolving loan fund, or will that be disqualified for time immemorial until some regulations are changed?
Through the chair, sir. Industrial hemp is defined, and that's one thing that both the 2014 and 2018 Farm Bill has defined. Industrial hemp as cannabis sativa that tests below 0.3% delta-9 THC on a dry weight basis. So we look at industrial hemp as another agricultural crop. So if an individual or business submitted an application to the Agricultural Revolving Loan Fund and their business plan and appropriate documents, met all of the other requirements, those opportunities would be given.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was the case to confirm.
Industrial hemp is an agricultural crop.
Correct.
And through the chair,
Ms. Wilson.
As counsel for the Board of Agriculture and Conservation, I believe I mentioned before that an agricultural loan was given also to a recreational cannabis grower. So I can't see industrial hemp facing any barriers.
Okay.
Yes, we actually
any
have
other questions,
loans, Dave, the director? We have loans to the recreational cannabis industry.
Okay. Any other questions from the board members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, just a couple. First of all, thanks for the presentation. It's very informative. And you may have said this, so I'll just apologize if I missed it. How many people have so far expressed interest in pursuing industrial hemp?
Through the chair, this is Rob Carter. Well, I will tell you that previous COVID, so going through this winter, I would have told you that we would have had over 250 growers registered in the state of Alaska with 1,000 plus acres. And again, as I said earlier, we did not reach that. We have actually 5 people registered to produce during this outdoor season, and that encompasses 70 acres and 9,000 square feet of greenhouse or controlled environment. We do believe that a lot of people went back to their roots and produced food or other things that they were familiar with and had a market for. So I'm not going to use here. It's a great
I don't
data.
care if you're scared. I'm asking you to leave the building and you're not listening, so I'm talking louder to you. So clearly you're not hearing what I'm saying. You need to leave the building right now. I heard you, like I told you earlier.
Hey, whoever's
I heard him.
commenting about somebody leaving the building, would they please mute their phone?
So awkward.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, just and one other question. This is perhaps a little esoteric, but I believe discussions we had a long time ago. There was concern with outdoor hemp crops inadvertently pollinizing outdoor rec cannabis crops. And I think my understanding of that was it wasn't a concern because the hemp flowers a little later. Can you speak to that?
Yes, sir. Through the chair, this is Rob Carter. There's a multitude of things, I guess, wrapped in that one question. One, we do within our regulations have isolation licenses for cannabis being produced as seed. Generally, people look at industrial hemp and they believe it to be both male and female plants. Majority of the plants that are being grown outdoors and indoors are females only. The seed that is used or the clones that are used are culled. The males are removed. So the amount of male plants available is actually very limited. For those people that are producing industrial hemp in a dioecious manner, both male and females within the same, for a seed crop or for a fiber crop, we are validating that those people are at a distance that we believe is safe for recreational cannabis growers. But there is that potential for cross-pollination. I would hope that any indoor cannabis growers that are near industrial hemp, they utilize high-quality filtration for both intake and exhaust vents within their controlled environment. But yes, we are watching that each grower that applies states their intended use. And again, if it's for extraction, which is generally majority of the production of industrial hemp, those products or those plants that are being grown are just as very much as well in the recreational industry are being grown for their floral material, and females only are being produced. But we will watch anything that is for fiber or for grain where male plants and pollen will be present.
Interesting. Okay, thanks. I have no other questions.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, Ms. Wilsine, I had stopped you during public testimony and you had some comments related to hemp. So without opening up to everybody else, I will open it up for you because I did cut you off during public testimony.
Sure, thank you.
I have an issue related to what Ms. Welsing might be talking about, so I have one thing I do want to apprise the board of after she speaks.
Okay, we'll go to Ms.
And
Wilson.
I think, did you say
Ms.
Wilson or
Wilson,
Wilson? Oh, okay.
No, Wilson.
So actually, this more has to do with the board and the issue of marijuana companies being required to have sole possession of the premises. So as Rob and Mr. Sadie were outlining, this is, hemp is a legal, federally legal business. And for marijuana companies, that means that, they could be generating revenue that's not negatively impacted by 280E, and they could also be banking that revenue into a banking system and take more cash off the streets, which is a safety concern, if they're able to start a new company that is for hemp licensing only. So say, having your own point of sale for all your CBD products and having the hemp company own that CBD point of sale, or allowing an entity to use the equipment for marijuana manufacturing to be able to run hemp products that will be tested for THC content, so there's that issue to address, and be able to make non-280E impacted revenue and be able to bank that revenue. And, Ms. Joan and I have been kind of bouncing around some ideas, but I would hope the board be open to some kind of determination, interpretation, or open a reg project that would allow a hemp company to utilize the marijuana license space, provided that they're either owned by the same group of folks or whatever other safeguards you need to make this happen, because this would, really, really create a great opportunity for the marijuana industry, which is uniquely situated to participate in the hemp industry, to pull some of their revenue out of that 280E negative impact tax implications and create a legitimate, federally approved business that could have a bank account, take some of that cash off the street, and not be so negatively impacted. So that's all I wanted to say, and I appreciate you giving me the time to express that.
Ms. Wilson.
and Ms. Wellstein stated it specifically. The issue we were dealing with was a processor who wanted to process industrial hemp and do so safely and make sure their equipment, wasn't cross-contaminated, and then have the same people form a separate corporation so that they could make everything she said, have a bank account, have to make tax deductions. With the requirement of sole control of a premises, we were really struggling how to make that happen, but we thought that the board, would definitely have a viewpoint on that, and that this might be an opportunity to bring it to you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Boy.
So we'll probably hold that one to the end. Are there any questions about the presentation on the health program from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, for Schulte.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, I understand this. It sounds like this is a suitable conversation for the end of tomorrow, perhaps. But while they're here, I wonder if Director Shady or Mr. Carter would care to weigh in on any problems that they would envision with combining or having co-location of both hemp and rec cannabis facilities.
Okay. Mr. Carter or Mr. Shady, do you have a comment?
So this is Dave. Can you hear me?
I can.
I'm back. I don't know why the phone went dead for a few minutes, but I got back. Yeah, so, right now, you have your marijuana establishments, some of them I know. I've drove by. I purposely have not gone in, but they're selling CBD products, and we don't have a problem with that. And I don't think we have a problem with the manufacturing as long as the two jurisdictions can work out and make sure that that we have a control system in place to make sure that all of the requirements are being met. The legal fiction of the ownership of the two different companies, that in and of itself doesn't bother us with our regulations. It's more an issue for the AMCO side of things, but we really believe that having people properly licensed and properly regulated is the most important thing to be safe products from both the marijuana and the industrial hemp side. Rob, you have anything to add?
No, I actually will say from an industrial hemp business development, industry development side, I would greatly appreciate if there was the ability to move raw industrial hemp through businesses that are also familiar with cannabis on the rec side, specifically the processors. We all know that the equipment and the skills and the abilities to process industrial hemp or recreational cannabis from its raw form into another form is a scientific process, and it would be a boon to the industrial hemp industry to utilize those already in place pieces of equipment and knowledge content within the people that are operating those, both from a consumer protection and an employee safety standpoint.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. My only comment.
This is Jane.
Ms. Wilson.
This is Jane.
Ms. Sawyer.
Yeah, sorry. I had a question for Mr. Carter. And if I understand it correctly, your regulations are going to require testing, pesticide testing. Is that correct? And how is that going to work?
Through the chair, yes, ma'am. Our program does require pesticide testing of industrial hemp, both in products that are being offered for sale that are previously processed and packaged, as well as ones that are being processed within the state. How is that going to happen? It is currently happening with the endorsements of products that are coming from other industrial hemp programs or pilot programs around the country. One requirement in the 2018 Farm Bill is that the industrial hemp be tested in a laboratory that has approval from the DEA. Knowing that was coming down the pipe, we have utilized DEA-approved testing facilities for industrial hemp-based products. the COAs we had received. And of course, those labs have that ability. They have the knowledge and the scientific equipment to do so. I am hoping that that Alaska comes on board and we get an in-state lab that has the want, the knowledge, and know-how to test for all of our contaminants.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Basically, they're being sent out of state, correct? Is that my understanding?
Or they are being tested before being shipped into state. You must remember that determine something that is industrial hemp prior to it leaving the farm that it was produced on. The only thing we are testing for is THC to make sure that that crop is legitimate industrial hemp. Once the product is being processed or offered for sale for human consumption or absorption, that is where the multitude of other contaminant testings come into play. No point testing industrial hemp that's going to be used for fiber for a bunch of stuff that costs a lot of money.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, my question had to do with the compliance letter that you sent. And it's been an issue for me, maybe not some of the other board members, but in my community, there's a lot of CBD oil sold in non-marijuana stores. I've always been told that that was basically illegal, but nobody was enforcing it. And that when I look at your compliance letter, it basically says that if you offer CBD oil that was produced out of state, is the retailer in the community in Alaska required to be registered with the federal requirement, or only the seller of the product that comes from Kansas or Colorado or wherever, sold in Anchorage or sold in Juneau? Does that retailer have to be registered with the federal government, or only the producer? I can't quite figure it out, because it was my understanding that if you bought CBD oil in Alaska, it had to be produced in Alaska. So maybe you can help me a little bit there. Go ahead, Rob.
Through the chair, this is Rob Carter, or to the chair, this is Rob Carter. There's, again, a multitude of questions within that. To offer for sale in the state of Alaska industrial hemp or industrial hemp derivatives, those products must be endorsed by our program, so they must met and carry a current COA for the batch that is of industrial hemp that's derived. We don't care about everything else. We care about the industrial hemp that's within the product being offered for sale. First and foremost, those products must be endorsed so that we can verify that they are safe for the consumer and they are what they say they are. Really, those laws are for truth in labeling. If you are offering for sale CBD, it better be CBD and contain what it says it is. There are two other questions within there. To offer for sale industrial hemp or industrial hemp derivatives in the state to the consumer, you must be a registered retailer with the state of Alaska, not the federal government. From outside sources, individuals that are offering for sale industrial hemp products, if they are selling directly to the consumer, even though the business resides outside the state of Alaska, we are still having them apply for a retail registration because they are, online sales direct to consumer. If it is a processor in another state that has an industrial hemp pilot program or federal program, and they are only wholesaling to other retail agents in the state of Alaska, those products must be endorsed, and the individual business that's selling those products in the state of Alaska, i.e. be that a recreational cannabis business or a grocery chain, they also must be registered retailers.
Why can't fucking...
I don't know who's swearing on the phone, but would you please mute your phone? We don't need to hear that. So awkward. Go ahead, Mr. Carter.
So hopefully that answers some of your questions there. The registration relies on the states, not on the federal government. The federal government are the ones that have set the guidance out there in both 14 and 18 Farm Bill. There is an option in 18 Farm Bill that you can go through a process to become registered with the USDA. I would highly recommend against that process and follow and join the state program to be legal. But again, if you are a business in the state of Alaska offering for sale raw industrial hemp or a derivative of industrial hemp, you must be a registered retailer with our program, and those products must be endorsed.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Wilson.
I think what you have recognized was a long-standing gap in enforcement caused for two reasons. One, we needed to get the industrial hemp regulations in place, and that process, if people were aware, took over 2 years. And secondly, while enforcement is important, education before enforcement is equally important. And Division of Ag has, been just beginning that process of going to retailers who may not have been aware that they actually need to register to sell this. In addition, the Department of Environmental Conservation, if any operation, for example, has a kitchen, say a gas station that, not even a kitchen that sells food, that has hot dogs and there is CBD on the shelves, they are now looking for endorsements of that product by the Alaska Industrial Hemp Pilot Program. So I truly believe you're going to see a change, Mr. Chair, in knowledge and in enforcement.
Right. This
Okay.
This is the director. I want to, and I want to make clear. I've had some people challenge the enforcement in this letter, which I signed, and we sent out. And the point is we will be doing equal opportunity education and enforcement. So. It is not just going to be marijuana shops. It's not just going to be gas stations. And I had somebody challenge me on Fred Meyer's and other stores, and we're not aware that they sell CBD products, but it does not matter. As Rob said, let's be clear. If you're selling an industrial hemp product or derivative, you must be registered with our program. And as we start moving out and about, we are starting that enforcement process, and the clear meaning of the letter was you no longer can claim ignorance. You are now warned that enforcement will start, and that's this month. So as we have the opportunity to get out and about, or we receive complaints, we start our enforcement process. As Attorney General Wilson said, we have worked really, really hard to do an educational campaign to get everybody to understand this is required. We still have people argue with us about the requirements. Now we're starting to go down, in a couple of cases, the enforcement road. And so I just want to assure everybody that it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, everybody has to follow the rules. And I am very firm about the fact is that we will be equal in all of the classes in how we do this. So thank you.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that because there are several places here in Juneau that have sandwich boards out, and you walk by and says, come get your CBD oil when it's out on the sidewalk, so or the sign is anyway, that are not marijuana businesses, and several have their ads in the paper about wellness products and mention CBD. So it'll be interesting to see how either they register and somehow the public knows that they're registered, or whatever. But we will, I guess we'll...
Mr. Chairman, as I alluded to earlier in the beginning of the presentation, there's a requirement that they have that industrial hemp sticker in their establishment so that you can see that they're registered. So it's a pretty visible sign, or lack thereof. So it is not too hard to walk up, and when there's no sign on the door that says this place is a registrant of the industrial hemp program, then we're going to know real fast. So,
I appreciate that.
To make it very easy to see.
Well, that's good, because I walk around my downtown, and I will be looking more for that sign than I had in the past. Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions from the board?
One more question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah. So what would it cost a retail store to get that sticker and to be participating in the program? What's the cost of entry?
Through the chair, this is Rob Carter. I'll chime in on that. Our application fee for any application is $100. A retail application is an annual fee of $300.
Oh, okay. So it's not a hugely onerous amount. How long does it take to get that?
We're processing them generally. We have kind of a surge right now, but we're about 7 to 10 days from the initial application if it is complete, and all of the proper information is provided. Of course, who you are, your business name, a map, the location of where your retail establishment are. It's generally 7 to 10 days before we can get that processed, the payment processed, and then, of course, snail mail boat back out with your 8x8 placard that for each of your retail locations.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thanks. No other questions.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, I would like to thank Director Shady and Mr. Carter for the presentation and answering our questions. And I'm sure the staff has been coordinating with you, and I guess since we share the attorney, maybe some of the regulatory issues might be easier to work out. So with that, I really do appreciate you.
The staff has been great to work with. And of course,
Great.
Attorney General Wilson and I talk daily.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
12:45.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I would again remind people to please mute your phone. We're hearing a lot more side conversation than we had earlier, and I would appreciate it if people would mute their phones. So it is time to move on to applications from previous meetings. So tab 9 is Rainforest Farms. This is a license transfer that we've put on hold a couple of times or moved forward related to the issue of state taxes. Is there anybody from Rainforest Farms on the phone?
Your Honor, Brian Hetty is here, and I called in the last agenda, and what we'd like to do is table this one more time to the next agenda.
Can I interrupt? This is James Barrett with Rainforest Farms. If you were asking for someone from Rainforest Farms, I believe Brian Hetty is representing the transferees or the Turnigan.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I had asked if anybody was on from Rainforest Farms. I was also going to ask if there was anybody on from the other. Turnigan Horticulture would like to move this to the next meeting. Mr. Barrett, do you have any issues with that?
I can't comment on that. Wait, I have no comment on that right now.
Okay. Mr. Clinkhart, or Mr. Barrett, are the taxes settled?
The taxes are not settled right now.
Okay, thank you. Please, there's some comments and questions and some laughter in the background. Could please mute your phone so we can conduct our meeting? Okay, so we've had a request and no comment. Is there action from the board? There a motion from the board?
I'm staring at the ceiling, trying to decide if I want to make a motion or ask a question.
You can make the motion and then ask the question.
Okay. Can I do it in the other order?
Sure.
So I'd like to ask Mr. Hetty, is there a reason that you want this tabled that you can share with the board?
I can just say that they're making progress with the funding. They hope to have it resolved by the next meeting, but it's just taking a bit longer than they anticipated.
Mr. Schulte.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I'm going to have some more questions on this, but I guess for the moment, I'll just move that we table it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to table. Is there any discussion? Mr. Miller, was that you?
I did second it, but I'm kind of curious to what Mr. Schulte's questions were.
Okay, fair enough. Since I made the motion, I have some real questions about this, about some of the ownership in this one or more of these companies, and in the transfer, and it really looks and sounds to me like we're transferring ownership to an out-of-state entity, and I'm not okay with that. If we can table it for now, but that's a huge question that is going to have to be answered before I can vote for this, whenever we do.
Okay. So Mr. Heddy, Mr. Barrett, you understand what some of the questions will come up in October if you have otherwise your ducks in order. Is there any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, so we have a motion to table to the October meeting. It's been seconded. Mr. DeShock?
Yes.
Mr. Jaime?
Yes.
Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that is tabled to the October meeting. The next item is cosmic seaweed, and this was related to the Chill Pill canine cookies. I would remind staff that I believe Director Klinkart sent out a email yesterday, the day before, that came from Cosmic Seaweed to, I believe it's probably to Jane Sawyer, Ms. Sawyer. So I will first go to Mr. Klinkart, and then we will go to Cosmic Seaweed, but I think the recommendation is that this be dropped as a product to be considered by us, especially given the last conversation. Mr. Klinkart.
Yes, just to, again, keep things short, we're recommending the board consider either taking no action on the Chill Pill canine cookies, or commence with a motion against just that specific part of their application. And I look forward to hearing from Cosmic Seaweed as well. And I also want to say thanks to them for even bringing this up and being patient with this process and trying to learn more about this. And also thank you to Mr. Carter and Mr. Shade for touching on this as I asked them to do so. So thank you.
Okay, Ms. Logan, are you online from Cosmic Seaweed?
Hello, Mr. Chair. This is Chris Logan from Cosmic Seaweed.
Do you have any comments?
Nope. I think I sent out that email yesterday responding to Director Klinkart's email and letter. And the only comment I have is listening to the hemp discussion, that hemp-derived products have to be the FDA approved, but cannabis-derived CBD and THC products for pet applications fall into a gray area. So I just wanted to make sure the board was clear on that, even though we're going to drop this whole issue at some point in the future. Possibly we'll bring it up, and that those are two separate categories of products.
Okay. So let me understand what's before the board, Mr. Klinkart. We have approved Cosmic Seaweed. We have approved list of products. This was the only product that we tabled. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And yeah, I think this actually was brought up back in January. So I think this was just this one area, and you had pulled it out. So I think that you can make a decision on it specifically. Over.
Okay. So Ms. Wilson, then we could, do we need to vote affirmatively to not consider this product at this time? Or would we just accept that it's been withdrawn by the manufacturer?
You can do the latter, sir. And then, as she stated, this will be an ongoing discussion going forward. One that I think will be very important to bring the state veterinarian in. But I appreciate her withdrawal.
Okay. So Ms. Logan, I wanted to make sure with your letter and Mr. Klinkart's recommendation, basically we can assume that you're withdrawing this product at this time.
Yes, that seems like the easiest thing to do. We will withdraw this product.
Okay. All right, so I will then just assume as chair that this product is withdrawn and there doesn't need to be any action from the board other than to recognize that this product has been withdrawn at this time. Okay, so let me move on here, make sure I keep my place. We have Lady Gray Gourmet Medibles as a board consideration. And this is tab 11. Please, if somebody has their phone open that's having a side conversation, could you please mute your phone? So we are on tab 11, Lady Gray Gourmet Medibles, and I believe this is an appeal of a late fee, late renewal fee, and there it is. So is there anybody online from Lady Gray Gourmet Medibles?
Yes, through the chair, Jana Waldstein, attorney for Lady Gray, and also Tasha Grossel is on the phone as well.
Okay. Mr. Klinkart.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And to the board, this is a request that Lady Gray, that there was a payment, which, long and short of it, I'm sure Ms. Welsine will expand on it, is that they paid their fee. It turned out that it was short. The staff did not discover this until after it had been in our possession due to the huge amount of applications that we've been seeing, which was then after the time. Ms. Welsine did correct the amount that was not included. However, because of the way that the rules and the regs and the statutes are, we bring this to you for consideration of refunding, or at least considering this particular late fee. And so I'll turn it over to Ms. Welsine for their side of it. We do not at this point take a stand either way from the AMCO staff. Over.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Welsine. Mr. Deshock.
No, this is Jaime.
Oh, Mr. Jaime.
Can you guys hear me okay? I'm on speakerphone over here.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I was just kind of curious. I was reading Ms. Welsine's letter that she sent to AMCO. Was the check postmarked prior to the deadline?
Yes, so they're actually cashier's checks, and so Tasha put them in the mail on the 26th of June. They actually received, and I attached the delivery receipt to the end of my letter. They were received on Monday the 29th, but understandably, AMCO staff, they can't always immediately process mail, and so they didn't figure out that Tasha accidentally was short $500 in her cashier's check that she had counted out until the 7th, I believe. Yep, the 7th of July. So that's 8 days after the fees arrived. But again, we understand that AMCO staff is really busy. But the fact of this is this licensee intended to comply with the renewal requirements. And she really did substantially comply. As this is a cash-only business, she had to send cashier's checks, and she didn't realize she was short one $500 cashier's check. And so the day that we got notice from AMCO that it was late, my office immediately went over there, paid the fees on her behalf, and then we're appealing this. And if you'll recall, Tasha, Lady Gray Medibles is one of the companies that always provides really, really detailed product reviews for your consideration. They routinely update their MJ15. They don't, just assume that the board's going to be okay with alternating ingredients. They always give you exactly what they're producing, and it's really clear. And this is a licensee that goes above and beyond. So we just would hope that the board would consider that she substantially complied, and her intent was to comply. And due to the nature of the workload on AMCO, this wasn't discovered until after the renewal deadline.
Mr. Jaime, did you get your question answered?
I did, thank you.
Do you have any other comments, Ms. Welsine?
Not unless the board has any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of the board of either Director Klinkart or of Ms. Welsine?
Mr. Chairman, for Schulte?
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, the director, I believe, stated this, but I just want to make sure the director doesn't really have a position either way with regards to the late fee.
Mr. Klinkart.
Yes, at this point, the rules dictated that we brought it to you, but we don't have a standing either way, and we'll leave it up to the will of the board. Thank you.
Okay, there's somebody has their phone open, they're either driving or they have it out the window. Could you please mute your phone? Well, that didn't do much good. Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, well, I would move then that we, to waive this late fee, and I could speak to that if I can get a second.
Well, we're still in discussion about this, aren't we?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was assuming there would be ongoing discussion after the motion, but if you had some more comments, I'll wait.
No, I just understand Mr. Director Clinkart doesn't have an opinion, but does enforcement have an opinion on this?
Mr. Jaime, you're really breaking up on your comment. If you get a little closer to the mic.
Yes, sir. I understand the director doesn't have an opinion, but does enforcement have an opinion on this?
Mr. Chair.
Ms.
This
Sawyer.
is Jane.
Oh, Jane. Ms. Wilson.
Yeah, Jane Sawyer, whatever you want to call me, it's fine. So when I looked at the paperwork, I was under the assumption that it had been dropped off. I didn't have a copy of this click and ship label record, and if I had it, it wouldn't have been linked because it's postmarked before the deadline.
Okay, Mr. Jaime, do you have any other questions?
Well, the original underfunded fee was postmarked prior to the date, but the full amount was still overdue, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep, you are correct.
Thank you.
So I take my statement back.
Okay, we have a motion to waive the late fee. Is there a second?
Second, Chuck.
Okay, there is a second to the motion to waive the late fee. Is there any further discussion by the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, I realize that, the late fees definitely serve an important motivational purpose, but it really sounds like this was an honest mistake. I don't sense it. It was a relatively small portion of the total, so it doesn't seem to me that they were intentionally trying to short the state. And if it had been caught in time, they would have had opportunity to pay it in time. But I also understand that the folks in the office are super busy. So my sense here is that nobody's really at fault. It was an honest mistake, and I don't know. I just don't see any value to the state or to the licensee or to the public in imposing a $1,000 late fee for the $500 that was made up within 8 days anyway. So that's my reason for making the motion. Nothing further to add.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
I'm just in complete agreement, and just the intent of somebody, I think, should be considered if they're doing what they can to comply, and then making up any shortfalls. I think that shows it should be considered.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. DeShock. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so on the motion to waive the late fee for Lady Gray Medibles, Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
No.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion passes 4-1. Okay.
Thank you.
The next item up for board consideration is tab 12, new standard marijuana cultivation facility application from DD3, I assume, in Houston. Mr. Klinkart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for a standard marijuana cultivation facility in the city of Houston by North Enterprises, doing business as DD, I believe it's III capital or 3. I'm sorry if I messed that up. Looks like we've got Local government pending, fire marshal pending, we're complete on background, no objections by the date, no other public comments. I turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, is there anybody from North Enterprises LLC?
Yes,
Davis is here.
There you go, attorney for North Enterprises, and Donald Davidson III. You just heard him chime in. He's also on the phone.
Okay, is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve with delegation, I think.
Okay. Is there a
They
second?
have all their other approvals.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. There are questions of the applicant from the board members?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I have a couple. So, Ms. Wilson or Mr. Davidson, is this facility built yet?
You want me to go?
No. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're not built yet. Groundwork was started. Foundation prep is pretty much ready. We're just waiting for fire marshal approval and building permits.
Okay. I noticed that the lease says that you will build the building, so that's why I asked, and it didn't look like in the picture that there was a building there. So that was good to know. So this will be probably actual approved for licensure. You're going to be building over the winter.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll talk to you next spring sometime then. Are there any other questions of the board related to this particular application? Okay, hearing none. On the motion to approve new standard cultivation with delegation, Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that is approved. The next item is tab 13, which is new limited cultivation facility, also in Houston. And compared to the address, you're going to be neighbors with DD3, the Solstice Green, license 21709. Mr. Klinkart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are still pending, looks like DEC response has been complete. There's some products to be, that need to be on the approved list. It's pending fire marshal. Background is complete. There have been no objections as of 8/5. No public comments. Questions, staff issues for the board. The residency is pending for one applicant because the PFD division experiencing long wait times. The applicant is requesting for their PFD eligibility determination to be part of the delegation. And that is all at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody online from Solstice Green?
Jana Weltine, attorney for Solstice Holdings, LLC, and I believe I have Lisa on the phone as one of the licensees. All right, Lisa Knight, you out there? Or Ashley?
Lisa Knight or Ashley? Trying to find it.
Humphreys.
They're never... Humphreys?
Yes.
Lisa or Ashley online?
No, they might, maybe they're having connection issues.
Okay, no problem. Is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve delegation.
Is your delegation approved? Does your delegation include the PFD?
Yes.
Okay, and does the second include that as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Since we don't have any of the applicants online, but we do have their attorney, are there any questions related to this particular application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Jaime.
Mr. Hyman.
Ms. Walsine, which of the applicants is pending their residency approval? The PFD approval?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure that out. I believe it's Ashley. And I'm confirming with my paralegal. Yeah, Ashley.
Okay. And I understand it's in delegation, but what's the issue there? When did she move to Alaska?
She moved to Alaska a little over 2 years ago, actually. And so she has her residency submitted, but the PDF or PFD division is experiencing really long wait times, and so we haven't gotten a response from the PFD department. And this will be her first, I believe, her first PFD. So usually the first ones are always kind of, they do more due diligence. They really look into it a lot longer, so it takes a little bit of time. So I think there's over 100, as my paralegal just texted me, there's over 100,000 applicants in the queue for the PFD department.
Holy cow. Okay.
100,000.
All right, thank you. No further questions.
That's interesting, given that they gave the PFD slot. Anyway, any other questions from the board?
Through the chair.
Mr. Miller.
So, I'm looking at the diagram premises NJ02, and I see there's a water tank. Does this facility have a well and a septic?
So no, they don't have a well. It's going to be a water tank, and we're working with DEC on I think it's going to be a leach field, I believe, but it might be a septic. I don't know the statistics of that, but we know that we're working with DEC on that.
Well, I guess my question will go directly to, I don't see a restroom or any washing sinks, or hand washing sinks.
So they're going to have a porta potty on site, and there should be a sink in there, but maybe we don't show it on the diagram. I thought that we did. That's going to be, one of those on-demand hot water heaters. And I think Lisa is calling in now. And Lisa Knight, are you out there? No, having trouble with that. Okay.
Any follow-up, Mr. Miller?
Well, I guess part of the delegation, I would like to see at least a hand wash sink shown in the diagram somewhere.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Wilson, is this facility built yet?
So, no, it's not. They are working on it. They've been clearing off the area. Maybe that was Lisa that just jumped on.
Yep, that was me.
Yes, okay, good. Can you give them an update on your construction status? I don't believe it's been fully erected yet, but maybe that's changed since last time we talked.
So the building is there, but we're still continuing to add to it, so we're going to have to put up some walls and insulation, so it's not completely finished.
Okay. When I looked at the list, there looks like there's a driveway into a residential, and is this a building that's off to the side of the residential? And then there's a road that goes along there with no access to that property, I guess, other than somebody could walk in there. Is there any security fence around the building? Is there any way to secure that from somebody walking in from other places other than near the house?
We are building a fence around it.
Okay. All right. There was a question that Mr. Miller asked before you got on related to you have a water tank, whether you're going to have a septic system. Part of the delegation will be that you have a show that you have a hand washing sink, and so just wanted you to be aware of that. I know your attorney would tell you, but since you're on, I will pass that on to you as well.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, any other questions from the board? Okay, we have a motion before the board to approve the application for a new limited marijuana cultivation facility for Solstice Green, license 21709 with delegation. The delegation including the PFD application and the hand wash sink. We'll ask the question, Mr. DeShaw.
Yeah.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that is passed.
Thank you.
Okay, it is, I'm getting my iPad to get off this one page. Okay, I show it is 11:50 or 11:48 a.m. We are about ready to start into the new retail marijuana store applications. So I am going to break for lunch at 11:50 a.m. We will come back at 1 o'clock. Hope you all have a good lunch, and we'll hang out and call back in at 1 o'clock. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will now end.